And thank you for coming out on this beautiful gray November evening. I'm Becky Dayton, and I'm the owner of the Vermont Book Shop. And before I introduce our author guest tonight, I'd like to give you a little background on this series, which we picked up in January of this year after several years hiatus. Each month on the first Tuesday, with an occasional exception as the calendar demands, we host a Vermont author who has a recently published book. We being myself and Renee, as representatives respectively of Vermont Book Shop and Elsley Public Library. In 2023, we hosted the local poet Jack Mayer, memoirist and co-founder of Shelburne Farms, Marilyn Webb Nagley, and amateur mycologist / photographer Meg Madden, among many others. Our 11th and final installment for 2023 will be on December 5th and feature Joe Roman, a fellow and writer-in-residence at the Gund Institute for the Environment at the University of Vermont. Roman is a conservation biologist whose book Eat, Poop, Die, How Animals Make Our World was released today. Renee and I do our very best to promote this series to our respective audiences with newspaper calendar listings, email newsletters, and social media, but it can be hard to get people's attention in modern America. So I hope you'll each think about telling someone you know to consider coming to a future VBS IPL First Tuesdays event. I've been doing this for 18 years and never, not even when there was an audience of 2, have I regretted the time I have spent in the presence of an author and my fellow curious souls. So without further ado, tonight it's my pleasure to welcome Bennington author Genevieve Plunkett with her debut novel In the Lobby of the Dream Hotel, which was a September 2023 Indie Next selection. Her short story collection, Prepare Her, was published in 2021 to rave reviews, and her work has been published in the O. Henry Prize Stories and in numerous literary journals, including the New England Review, the Southern Review, and Story. Joining Genevieve on stage tonight is Janice Obuchowski, whose short story collection, The Woods, won the 2022 Iowa Short Fiction Award. Obuchowski is a former fiction editor for the New England Review and was a visiting professor in writing at Middlebury College. She is now a freelance editor and consultant to aspiring writers. Please help me welcome our special guest, Genevieve Plunkett, and her interlocutor of choice, Janice Obuchowski.
Thank you. Look, I love a small audience. The only problem is that I get a little comfortable sometimes. I tend to overshare. So we're going to keep it cozy, and I'm going to keep my filter on.
Or not. Well, I'll tell you, if you get far enough into the conversation, Genevieve will promise some drama.
There's a little bit of drama.
So,
yeah.
some foreshadowing.
So the one thing that I don't usually do when there's a small crowd is read, because that sometimes then just feels, I don't know. I feel like it's more like a conversation.
You might read for our YouTube fans.
Sure.
For a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I had like a couple pages, like a couple drama. Yeah, I had just a few minutes. That might actually get us into gear.
Do you think so? Would people like that?
Sure.
I never regret hearing a
Okay.
novel read.
Oh, wonderful. You could have gone either way with that. I never.
Drama. I think that's the buzzword tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I would like to read just the beginning of a chapter that I titled Pills. And I realized at some point when I was looking for something to read that I think I kind of built the book around this chapter, or around this scene, because the scene shows up in numerous chapters. So Portia, the main character, has just gotten home late. She's had a beer at a bar with the man who she's interested in, having kind of an emotional, psychic affair with. And so she's just come home to the house that she shares with her husband. It was late. Portia knew that it was late as she dug through her purse, searching for her key to the back door. For whatever reason, the motion detection light above the garage had not come on, and she had to feel for the key in the dark. She thrust her hand in, pushing around the Tylenol bottle, the mascara, and all that loose change, afraid suddenly that she had left the keys at the bar in the crevice of the booth where she and Theo had huddled under the neon lighting. If it came to defending herself to Nathan, that's her husband. She could say that they had not kissed, their knees had not touched, and she had paid for her own drink. It had only gone wrong toward the end when a loud group of women came in and played the jukebox, and she could no longer hear Theo's voice above the noise. He had leaned in to say something, slipping a little on the vinyl seat, and she had felt his breath beneath her ear. Portia replayed the moment in her head on the back porch, crouching now to look hopelessly into the bottom of her purse. How could something so slight, she wondered, undo her so completely? She had never been one to admit total infatuation. She had tried her whole life to keep herself above a certain mark of foolishness when it came to love. But now she wanted to dive in. She wanted to stay awake the rest of the night, just to feel the feeling, or just to remember the feeling of his breath on her neck. She was like a tree, guilty of having its leaves blown off by the wind. A light came on. Portia could see her keys lying on the welcome mat where they must have fallen when she first began looking for them. Nathan stood outlined in the doorway. Portia, in her state of stupid, ecstatic confusion, had not considered that he might have waited up for her. She thought that he would ask her where she had been or how much she had had to drink, but he was silent. He backed away slowly, down the hall as she entered the house. He was calm. He was dressed. Portia took off her shoes and saw as she passed the kitchen that it was 2 a.m. She had not meant to be out that long. It worried her for an instant how easily she had been swept away, forgetting about time and all the other moving parts of her life. Someone might say that she was losing her grip. But she and Theo had only had the 2 drinks in the dark booth by the corner. From there, they had watched a group of women come in. The one with the ill-fitted pink dress had danced with a pool cue, upsetting the couple trying to play. "When did you stop taking your pills?" Nathan asked her. The woman in the tight pink dress danced slowly in the back of her mind, wrapping her plump leg around the cue as if it were a pole. "What pills?" Portia asked. Nathan knew about Theo. She had confessed to him already, told him he had better sit down and listen. She had never been so direct in her life, and thinking back to it, she remembered the conversation as if someone else had been sitting behind her eyes, relaying the message through her mouth. Since that night, Nathan had kept his feelings concealed from her, going about his routines with only a sharper curve to them, the way actors must articulate their movements so that those furthest from the stage can understand what they are doing. Farthest, actually. Quite simply, Portia could tell that the news had hit a nerve in Nathan. She just could not tell which one. She wondered if she was going to see his anger now. I'll stop there.
Wow.
That was wonderful. That is a tense scene.
Yeah.
I wanted to just foreground the conversation a tiny bit with how I know Genevieve and how I know her writing. Just to begin, I first read Genevieve's fiction when I was an editor at the New England Review a few years ago. And I read the first story behind the scenes before it had been published, and I thought, yeah, all right, you have my attention, because it was so singular, it felt so particular to one mind. And then a couple of years later, were publishing a second story called Trespassers, and the editor, Caroline Keebler, handed a copy of the story to me. I was in the office, and she said, read it. And I read it, and I said, oh, she's growing, she's getting better. And
Wow.
Caroline was like, yes. And so we had this, we felt like we were in on the secret of Genevieve early. Like, Genevieve, here's this Genevieve. And I remember thinking that the story, the second one in particular, was almost like a spider building out a web, where it had this kind of, the connections were they were all growing, and they were all intermeshed, and it was delicate, and still had a nice structure, there's beauty to it. And I returned to that thinking about the web when I was reading this book, because what I was thinking about is that this is a book that has many topics, many themes, and so it's about motherhood, it's about mental illness, it's about marriage, it's about love, control. Do we need medication? Do we need psychiatric care? Freedom, music, it has all these things that are happening in there. And the fascinating, the most salient thing to me is that it has to do with how Portia synthesizes all of those topics. so it's again that web. It has to do with the connections that Portia's making. I think of this book as a portrait of a mind in most of it, and it's fascinating to me. So I just want everyone to be as excited about it as I am.
And I've been stalking Janice online since the New England Review days. Not literally stalking, but whenever you published something, I was aware, and I was, so it was really cool when you reached out to me a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Or last year. Oh God.
I know.
I don't know.
It's
Anyway,
time.
Vermont authors, we know about each other.
Right, we're
Yeah.
the small little tribe. Something I actually wanted to ask you about was that I was thinking about the book as being about care, how people care for each other, how Portia cares for people in the book, but also how she's taken care of. And sometimes that care is really inadequate. She's not taken care of well. And so my question to Genevieve was, did she see it in those terms? Were you thinking about it that way as you were writing it? Or did you frame it differently yourself?
I think it's a really interesting question. And I think when care came up, for me, that idea, I was seeing it as how sometimes manipulation and emotional abuse in a marriage can look like care, can look like I'm just very concerned, or I'm worried that maybe you're not handling something right, or and I think what I wanted to do, especially with Nathan's character, was show the many facets of how he cared, and so it wasn't just look how horrible he can be in this way, in this way, in this way. It was more look how insidious a relationship like this can be for someone like Portia, who's kind of been cared for her whole life because she's had a diagnosis. It can be very confusing to be in a relationship with a power imbalance when someone is directing that imbalance at you under the guise of it's just because I care or for your well-being. I also was wanted to bring attention. There's a moment where Portia is having some delusions, and she's not really worried about them because they feel kind of nice. They feel interesting to her, but her psychiatrist says, well, if you didn't have children or a child, if you weren't a mother, I might treat this differently. And so I think care comes into there too. It's like, how are you cared for differently when you have someone under your care?
Right.
And so that was the main reason that she was actually medicated in the first place. Was not for her own good, but because she was a mother.
Right.
Does that answer
Yeah,
the question?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about too is that the flip side of that care is control.
Yeah.
And the way that Portia's controlled in this book also takes place, it comes at her from multiple ostensible positions of authority. People who are claiming they're in charge are saying, this is what's best for you, Portia, which seems to me, one of the tensions of the book for me was always, is Portia going to take it? And Portia, is she going to rebel against this? Can she rebel against this? Are the systems set up in a way that she can rebel even? So I wanted to ask if that was something on your mind too when you were writing.
Yeah, for sure. I think I really wanted to make it clear. I guess, I don't know if I succeeded, but I wanted the reader to be angry for Portia in moments where she didn't have the wherewithal to see that she had more autonomy than she was led to believe, I guess. So I'm sorry, I lost my thread.
I had this thought when there's moments, this is a problem, but so Portia's committed, her husband committed me, it's never clear that that actually had to happen. And she had been committed 13 years earlier again for their brief stay. And so as that's happening, to me felt like a horror movie. I just kept thinking, fight back away, get out of there, don't do it, don't go along with it. And so, I mean, it's almost a way in for readers. That was something I was thinking about too. The ways that Portia's mind is not my mind, is not probably most readers' minds, but still there's all these ways she's accessible to us, or we can put ourselves in her shoes.
That was a really tricky part of the book to write, because of course if you're an adult and you're not, you know, an immediate danger to yourself and others, which Portia was not in the book, you have to agree to be committed. And of course that was actually good for the story, because I wanted to show how a person could believe that it was in their best interest to do that, but also not in a way that would be entirely frustrating.
Right.
You know, and I think what tools I tried to use was her own guilt. You know, like, is she causing more trouble for the people around her if she fights back, or if she just goes? And I think she just relents and says yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Another major thing that happens for Portia is that she falls in love in the book, and this is so great to me, so fascinating, because love in the book feels like a dream. It has that other sort of heightened reality to it, this shimmer of maybe it's happening, maybe it's not. And to me, it was a way in to Portia's mind that let me think that, well, our minds are altered at points in our lives, right?
Yeah.
So the love to me that she feels was a kind of blossoming that I thought, oh, now I see the blurriness of these other heightened states that she can be in, or altered states.
Yeah.
Were you aiming to bring people in that way?
Yeah, that was also difficult, because I did want to make it feel so ecstatic and so magical, being in love, that it brought up Portia's doubts about her mental state, because at one point in the book she thinks that a dead rock star is communicating with her, like, beyond the grave, and that feels great, you know, like she's looking up codes in the song lyrics and everything. And in a way, though, I mean, love, when it's just starting out, for people who aren't mentally ill, it can feel very much the same.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, it's a sign, oh, we're meant to be together, you're always thinking about the person. So I did have fun playing with that aspect of being in love, but also through a character who very easily can be up here.
Right.
And to have her question at some points,
Right.
like, is this real, or am I going to snap out of it the next day?
Yeah.
And
You mentioned that musician.
Yeah.
Which speaks to her from beyond the grave. One of the things I thought we should talk about a little bit is the music in the book, because it has all sorts of ramifications for her.
yeah. I love writing about music.
Yeah.
I am a musician, and very much like Portia, I thought I was going to be a musician before I became a writer. So it was really, I think selfishly, I wanted to tap into a character who was like me in that way, who had the same longing for music, who had the same connection to music. It was very rewarding to go there, but it also, it wasn't just a selfish thing, because music is been very much tied to mania for Portia. And one of the sad things is that when she's on the antipsychotic, she can't feel it. She can still hear it, but it's almost like hearing a different language. So you're hearing it, it's going into your mind, you're processing it, but it's not going through her. And the problem is that she can't really justify that that's a big enough problem to go off it, which she does go off her medication, but there's the problem of towards the end, her friend is saying, if we're going to be brilliant, we would have been brilliant, as if in order to earn the experience of music, you have to be as famous as her, the rock star that she idolizes.
Right.
Does that, am I making
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, absolutely.
So it was, I wanted to bring up that problem. Is it, do we deserve to feel art at the expense of maybe the comfort of the people around us, our safety? I don't know, and that was a big thing that I wanted to address in that way.
One thing that I continued to think about after I read was, so she medicated, she doesn't feel music the same way, right? There's a kind of deadening. But off her meds, to me, there's this heartbreaking scene where she wakes up in the middle of the night, writes down a song that she's convinced is genius. Is it okay then?
Yeah. Narrating your, please.
So then she goes across town in the middle of the night, snow in her boots, and knocks on her friend Carrie's door. She and her friend Carrie go on the field in the band together, and she tells Carrie, "You have to hear this song. This song is amazing that I just wrote." And heartbreaking to me, a hallmark of the text, is that she's processing. Portia's processing that things are amiss, that she's not getting everything right, that they're really caught off guard by her showing up, and yet she's convinced. She needs to play this song. And her friend Carrie, this is where I was thinking about Carrie too.
Yeah.
Carrie knows her well enough to know how to handle this. So Portia plays the song, but Carrie videotapes it with her phone and then plays it back to Portia. And then Portia can hear that it's not good.
It's garbage.
That crushed me. It crushed me so much that the art wasn't there.
Yeah.
So then I thought, where's the answer for Portia? If she's medicated, she can't feel it, but if she's not medicated, she can't gauge when her art is good.
Yeah.
In those ways that she would need to.
Yeah. I think that's also the risk of art, because I think that a lot of artists can relate to that scene, but not to the extreme, maybe not, but I feel like many of us have woken up with the most brilliant idea, but we have the wherewithal to maybe sit on it, sleep on it, and then work on it, or work through it, and, Portia, poor darling in that moment, couldn't, because it felt too big, and I think there's more going on in that scene too than just a failed song. She's feeling so everything so intensely, and she can't express it. But you're. I'm glad you felt that way about that scene, because it brings up care also, because it puts Carrie in a situation where she has to be a caretaker, and it puts Portia back in that situation that she hates to be in, where she is, where she's beholden to the people around her, because she's done a thing again that was, upsetting or inconvenient.
Or her husband can then hold against her.
Oh yeah,
She's not controlling herself.
Exactly.
She needs control to come from other aspects of her life.
Right. Even though no one was harmed, it was just an embarrassing thing, But yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of the book. Genevieve does something that's really chancy and unusual to my mind. It's not linear, the narrative. We start, I think, in the present. She's taking care of her son. Then we flash back 13 years, and we continue that kind of shuffle, going back and forth between past and present, but not always in the way that you would understand even where the current story is. Often you're having to put things together. You, the reader, have to work to assemble the timeline, to assemble when things happened. To me, it can create a kind of beautiful confusion because it felt like it mimics the mind. It mimics how memory works, but it also mimics particularly Portia as she's trying to negotiate what's happening in her life. Were you thinking that? Were you like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go after the process of the mind?
So, in a way, I met with a book club a couple nights ago that read the book, and it's so funny because half of them like really dug the way it was set up, you know, and they were all mental health workers too, which was also very interesting. And maybe the other half, you could tell they were trying to be really nice to me and be like, well, I didn't really follow it, but maybe that's just me. And I was like, no, you know, it is a risk to take, to write a book like that. I wanted to write, I guess I wrote the book, the first draft in 2020 during the lockdown, and I had my kids, and they didn't have school, and I had a deadline because I had already sold the book and then had to write it. So I think I reached a point where I didn't want to fight the way my own brain worked. I wanted to write. I saw the whole story. I knew the whole story. And I wanted it to come out the way that it wanted to come out. And I have experienced mania in the way that Portia has in the book. And there is a certain creative desire to share that different headspaces with the world.
Yeah.
And when I have been manic in the past, it feels like everything's happening all at once. It feels like I am up here and I am looking down, and it's all seeping up through the bottom.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to try to write a book that happened all at once.
Yeah. No, it felt like mimetic. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking about.
So I'm glad that it worked for you. And I think that I think it's just one of those things that it works for people who can who recognize that kind of thinking or that kind of experience.
Yeah. I love a narrative gambit.
Yes. Thank you.
So I've been talking about the book as almost all Portia's, but secretly I've been keeping back that Theo, the person with whom she falls in love, also gets chapters. So we open up the book. It's not just Portia's mind, it points at Theo's as well. And I wanted to ask about that decision. What were you thinking about in including another point of view?
So it was very important to me that the audience the reader never had a suspicion that Theo was real.
Yeah.
Because it's not that kind of book. It's not A Beautiful Mind or whoever, where Clay Club. Theo is very much real, and he is going through the same thing. He is in love, and he is having feelings too. And so it was important for me to get in his mind and to show the reader that he's here. He's not a figment of Portia's imagination, and that he mirrors her in a lot of ways. as kind of a dreamer, you know, and how sad is it when two dreamers fall in love, you know, and the rest of the world doesn't get it. I love the character of Theo, and I had a really good time writing from his perspective, and I joked with Jamie when I was going through the editing process because my editor did not touch those chapters. She did not mark them up at all. They were the same as what I wrote from the beginning. And so, but she had some things to say about the rest of the book. So I was just like, well, Theo's just perfect, you know. So
Tell us more about that. This is Lee Newman.
Lee Newman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her. Lee Newman was my editor for both books, and she has since so sorry, I'm gonna jump back a little bit because I had my last event was with Richard Mirabella, who was also Lee Newman's what do you call it? Author. Right. Before she left Catapult, so we were like the last two. And we had a lot of fun saying that she left us for Oprah because she did. She's now the editor of the Oprah's book club, so she like feeds Oprah the book recommendations for that. And she so deserves it because she's brilliant. She's wonderful. And I just can't believe she let me write this book, but she believed in it from the beginning. Even my agent was a little hesitant to send her the first chapters because it was one of those things where I had a short story collection already written, and a lot of publishers were interested in it, but not without the novel attached. So I had gotten a lot of rejections before Lee picked it up, saying, well, come back when you have the novel, which is a lot of short story writers' experience. So Lee was ready to publish the short story collection, and we kind of nudged her saying, well, there's probably a novel coming after, and she's like, no, let me see it now, and that was terrifying, but she believed in it, in what I had, which was 3 chapters. But she was very much a part of getting this working. So she wasn't just like, oh great, you know, write it and then whatever. She was really hands-on, and I was very, very lucky for that.
Right. She's a great writer too.
She is. Yeah. Nobody Gets Out Alive is her short story collection. Yeah, I highly recommend it.
So actually, we could talk about this a little bit, the difference between writing short stories and a novel. They're very different, to me, they're very different engagements, methods of thought.
Yeah.
Do you have one you prefer over the other?
I don't know if I can answer
Yeah.
that question. I would be sitting here in a lot of boring silence. I sometimes take a break from writing novels because I've actually written a lot of novels in the last 5 years or so, and I'll write short stories because there's no gratification in writing novels at all. And there's some wonderful gratification when you get to the end of a short story and you're like, oh, it's the end! You know, especially the way I write them, which is I never really know when the end is going to be until it like shows up like a cobra, you know, you're like, you're there! So I guess writing short stories is more gratifying. But I love thinking of novels, and I have way too many ideas for novels.
Which is exciting.
It is, but
How many have you written?
so I don't know if this gets into the drama.
Yeah, drama. Yeah.
Well, I wrote a novel before I wrote this one, and before I had my current agent, that I showed to an agent because she was like very interested in it until she wasn't. So
Previous agent.
I didn't, I,
Oh,
she,
you
I never
signed
signed
it.
with her, she was like checking in on
Yeah.
me, so I was like, this is certain, you know, like, she emailed me, how's the novel, and then I sent her what I had, and she was like, no. So I don't really count that one, but I kind of count it. After I finished In the Lobby of the Dream Hotel, because I was still waiting for Prepared to be published, and because there's sometimes months in between when you hand in your edits and then your editor gets back to you, I was like, I'm gonna write another book. So I wrote another book. And it was called The Familiar Pleasure of Being Eaten Alive. And I sent it to my agent, and this was the week before this novel published, we sent it to my new editor at Catapult, who rejected it because it was too disturbing. So
Which is hard. This is very hard to lose your editor.
it was really hard. And so we were a little bit worried. So we had a sensitivity reader read it. And I know I told you this story, but and he came back with great things, but said that it was too disturbing. And I know this is going on YouTube, but I'm not unhappy about any of this. This is all like working towards the best like outcome, because deep down I kind of already knew that this wasn't the book to go out with next, and it kind of confirmed that, but in a very long, roundabout way. We call it the scenic route. Like sometimes I'll feel like something is a no, but it's the scenic no. Like I have to go through all of the lessons to get there.
Well, to write a novel is no small thing.
No.
That is a very hard way to learn that it's the wrong one.
But I, because I finished that novel in 2022 and then still had to wait for this novel to come out, I decided to start a new one.
Yes.
Because I don't know.
This is super productive.
Because I'm compulsive. Yeah, I'm just compulsive. And this one is not at all disturbing. It's supposed to be like darkly humorous. It's about sex. It's about kink and all the ways that can be very confusing and can go wrong. And I told my agent very timidly about this idea, and she was very excited. So my plan right now is to write this novel as quickly as I can before I run out of money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the drama. I don't know if you were.
That's pretty
if
good.
you
No,
were
that's great.
expecting something else.
You've got
but,
deadlines, sex, kink.
yeah. So it keeps things very interesting, and it keeps my own story going. And since I thrive on stories, I try to be grateful even in the very uncertain moments. Whereas, well, this is just part of the story, or this just adds tension.
How fast are you writing? This is sort of a technical question.
I'm trying to write 1,000 words a day.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've ever set that goal for yourself. It's terrible.
Yeah. So what happens, for me, what happens is you can do it for a couple days, but then there's the chaos of what those 1,000 words actually look like.
Yeah.
And then you really have to spend time making it better before you can go on, and then you've blown your 1,000 word a day pace. Well, that's mine.
Yeah, it's exactly what happens, and I've set that goal for myself so many times over the year. Talking about lessons, this one I'm not going to learn because I'm still delusionally going to think that I can do 1,000 words a day, but I'm very motivated because I thought I had another book in my back pocket, and now I don't. You know,
Maybe you revisit it in a couple of years. Is it that kind of project or no?
the one that didn't work out, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe fully in that book, but I understand the need to write something marketable.
Yeah.
And I'm not above that.
I'm not. It happens. And I say that as someone whose book, I had a book that didn't sell either.
Yeah.
It was deemed too quiet, so not marketable enough. So my eyes from that prize, the novel I'm writing now, that I won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, it's hard though, because when you say, you know, it was too quiet, of course my heart goes, I love quiet books. Like, what else would you want to read, especially in November, you know, when your life is hectic, and something beautiful that just, I know it's beautiful because I, I love your writing. And when I tell people the story about the book being too disturbing, they're like, but I love disturbing. And I'm like, you know, it might just be the polite way to say no in my case, but we can't control the book.
My immediate thought was Philip Roth was allowed to, but different time, different.
Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth Strout and Stephen King. Quiet,
Right?
disturbing.
I know.
They wrote so like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so that's right. Someone told me that they heard that sad isn't selling right now. I was like, I'm sure that is incorrect.
That was also the problem with the book, was that it was full of very, very sad people who were just too sad.
Did they say that? Too sad?
And I was like, well, I either want to write about sadness or sex, so that sadness didn't work out.
So it is.
Let's go. But it's very daunting to try to write something that you've already sold to at least one person as funny.
Yes.
Now I'm like up against myself every day, like, I'm not funny. Like, what the heck? Or I'm laughing to myself and I just feel like a complete just idiot.
I bet you can be funny. Yes.
Yeah, so we'll see.
I'm excited for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do any of you have questions?
Yes, questions?
I have a question. We read about emotional relationship. I can't remember the words you used right now. I just forgot them. But affair, an emotional affair,
Yeah.
which is an interesting concept to me. I'm curious if you could talk to me a little bit about your thoughts, where that was. Do you think it was really an affair, something to be feeling guilty about?
Yeah, so that was also tricky because, you know, I understand that some people might look at the jacket of a book and say, ooh, a lover, like this is going to be spicy, and it's not. Portia and Theo have what they believe to be kind of a psychic connection, and it's very intense for them, and I don't think it counts as an affair personally, but I think in writing it, it wasn't important to me who was on the moral higher ground, because it's not about that. People should have rights, whether they've had an affair or made a mistake like that, and I think that I wanted to use that again as leverage that her husband could use against her, and it wasn't really about us judging. I still don't really know as the writer of the book, and I don't think I ever really was concerned about whether it was bad or good. It was just needed to be intense, and it needed to be kind of an awakening for her. And I think that sorry, I don't know, I'm being careful here because I'm the writer of the book, but I think that it was worth it. The messiness of it was worth it for Portia to have that moment where she could have left, or when she could have kept going with whatever version of herself she was finding was waking up. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that if I made them sneaking off in the woods, it would have not that I wanted it to be pure, because I don't think sex makes things impure, but hey there.
Oh, she wants to be let in.
It's Carolyn Keebler.
I'm on it, I got it.
I haven't read your book yet, but do you think, like, given where you were in your life, like you just left your marriage and then we're in lockdown from the global pandemic, do you think the book would be the same if it was written at a different time? Or like, was it always going to be this book, or did all that?
That's a fantastic question, and I think absolutely, sorry. That was amazing. I'm so happy to see you. I think that I might have taken it down a couple of notches in a way that would not have benefited the novel had I not been writing in a very tumultuous time during my life. I don't think, nothing in my life was stable at that time, so I think that also leads to the way that it's written out of time, because I was very much out of sync with not in a bad way, but I think I would have tried to refine it a little too much had I not written it under those conditions. I think. I want to say that, but you don't know.
It's chancy. I'd say it's successful.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Have a question?
What time is it really starting?
Apparently I didn't change everything. They read something that said 7 p.m. instead of 6
Oh
p.m.
no.
So if other people are banging on the window, you know why.
Okay.
So sorry.
Maybe we'll do it again.
Did you miss or did you read, and what did we miss? Just chatting.
We're trying to channel a wealthy benefactor through the camera first. Yeah. We're not channel, trying to manifest it.
I think we gave Carolyn credit for discovering you earlier as well, didn't we?
Yeah, Carolyn kind of started my career, and I have her to thank for pulling me out of the slush, because I did a lot of writing and submitting into the darkness, into the void, and hearing nothing back, and what a gift to see my first print story in such a magazine journal that I love so much, and so that was just wild for me, and it happened right at the right time in my life, because I don't know, you always come to those moments where you're like, do I stop doing this? And I was almost at one of those ruts. Not to say that it would stop forever, but it really boosted my confidence, and
Well, you mentioned that you were a musician, and you thought you would be a musician until you realized that you were a writer.
Mm-hmm.
What was the tipping point for that, and how did you know that you were a writer and were going to do that?
I went to Bennington College thinking that I was going to be a folk singer. Really, really thought that, and it was going fine, but the one thing that they make you do at Bennington is take a lot of different courses that you wouldn't normally take. So I threw in political economics and screenwriting. And I thought that I was going to be very intimidated by the screenwriting class because I had dated film guys and they all knew everything and I knew nothing. But my screenwriting teacher, after the first class, kind of singled me out and was like, you're a writer. And I really needed to hear that from somebody, and I think that everyone should have that gift that some, authority figure comes down from wherever and says, this is what you are. And he said, you need to be writing anything and everything. And the way that they do the grades at Bennington is they have a written evaluation, it's very individual. And I still tack that one up from him, Stephen Bach. Actually, I think I dedicated this book to him, and it has, continue writing anything and everything. And I haven't stopped since then. I mean, he died in 2009, and I kind of made a little promise to myself that I was gonna keep doing it.
Have you ever written a screenplay?
Only when I was taking advanced screenwriting at Bennington, and it was like a sci-fi. It was wild.
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
I don't know. It was very long. It was about night, sleep paralysis, and dimensions opening up through sleep paralysis. Yeah.
That's my jam. I also suffer from sleep paralysis.
It scares me so much. I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna pursue screenwriting. I don't think I can commit to that right now. But it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Or that power from on high, telling you you're a writer. I mean, it's such a big moment.
It was a huge moment for me, especially as a non-traditional student, where it seemed everyone else in the world had an idea, had an internal engine of, this is what I want to create, this is my vision, and I was just very, very much hoping that someone would give me some direction. And
You're still a practicing musician right now, aren't you?
Yes. I wish I was playing more, but Jamie and we have a band. This is Jamie.
Instruments?
No. Jamie plays drums in the band, and I play electric guitar and sing.
Maybe that's your day job.
We're called the Wand. Did I say that already? And we, unfortunately, were playing out, and we were getting a good audience, and then the pandemic happened, and it's hard to fit in.
We'll get back out there.
Yeah, it's hard to fit in practice when you're trying to write a sex novel. I have kids. He has kids. But it's a lot of fun, and it is rewarding and instantly gratifying in a way that writing short stories and novels is not, because it's I wrote this song, I can play it, and it's out in the air immediately. It's not hidden, you're not waiting for someone to check it out of the library. It's just crank up the volume. Yeah.
I'm in a singing group now where sometimes rehearsal, it's so nice to have just the focus is the moment. You're just trying to learn the thing, and that's all you're thinking about.
Yeah.
With the novel or even the short story, you are trying to be everywhere at once in the story, or you've accomplished so little in your head for the day, and you want to accomplish so much more. And there's all this anxiety that's slow and constant.
And the overlapping voices. Who's gonna hate this? What critic is gonna say this about this? I like it. Do you really? And there's something about music where it's coming up through the ground, it's coming out, and you're just I think it's very needed. If that's something that you do as a creative person, to have that outlet that's not the anxiety producing one. How are we doing with time and everything?
Well, I could listen to you all evening. It's been a pleasure and a joy. We are at a little over an hour.
Yeah, I don't want to hold anybody here.
I love their format.
Holy moly, this was
Thank you, Jen, for
amazing.
doing this.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
I love it.
Yeah, wonderful job. Well, because I've been on that side, and it's a different world over there.